Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, looks like I'm live. I'm in a different place this week. I'm usually doing these live sessions from my home, Osholilo in Dorset. And it's a little bit. And now I'm like weekends I sometimes come down to Brighton just to hang out. I lived in spiritual community for like 16 years. 16 years next week actually. 16 years next week. Oh, I got someone asked me a question already. It says, hey, Lorinas. Anyway, I live there 16 years, still do, but I like to get down and get out of the countryside, sometimes into the city. Most people go the other way. I like cities, so I come down here. I couldn't do it last week because I was running a workshop, so I've been looking forward to it. And then it's like the weather is like suddenly it's gone really fucking cold again. It's like 0 in the UK and 0 centigrade. And it's been snowing and all that. Still, it's okay. Anyway, I see a couple of people are tuning in. If you've got any questions, feel free to go for it, or I'll just continue rattling along quite peacefully and drinking my little cup of turmeric chai. What was I saying? Yeah, I mean, it's exciting living communally, and it's taught me quite a lot. I think one of the main things I've really learned from it is like, because people talk about community a lot, it's like a big buzzword, if you go on social media, community. But there's a vast difference between like some kind of online community where, people interact over computer or phone or whatever, and actually living together in a closed kind of environment, real close up. And the main difference is the level of emotionality that is brought up in people. When you're kind of online and in your little computer thing, then you can kind of be anyone you want to be. In a sense, you can just become anybody you want to be, and kind of put it out like that. But when you're living really right in each other's faces, that breaks down if it's false. The falseness starts to break down. My background is like, spiritually, is like Osho Sannyas, was a mystic from the 70s and 80s. And, he used community a lot because it's so fucking intense living in community. All your shit comes up. So, in meditation or personal development terms, that can be put to good use if people want to go for it. If they want to go deeper. And in an online community, people try a little bit here and there to call each other on stuff, but it's a lot of mind, And what I see these days is like people's, we're online so much, we're so much interacting from this thinking mind, is like we get really fucking complicated. Hey, hello Luigi, hey man, hope you've had a good week, and yeah, down in Christchurch, if I remember correctly. I'm just rattling on a bit about community and what I learned from community living. Next week it'll be like 16 years. I actually came to Osholilo originally for like a 3-week meditation group, an old Osho thing called the Mystic Rose. And after 1 week I thought, fuck it, I'm not going back to London. I'd also been in this relationship, and I hadn't been in a relationship for a long time, and it had broken up. And I just thought like, I wasn't really so much in a big relationship drama because I'd been the one breaking the relationship up. And for a long time, all I'd wanted was a girlfriend. I'd been in a fucking mess for quite a long time at that point. It's about nearly 20 years ago, 16 years ago. And at the time, I just thought, I just want a girlfriend. Then I got a girlfriend and it was all good. Actually, she used to live just up the road from here in Hove. But then at some point, I just wanted to go deeper in my own journey. And so, we split. And I just thought quite quickly after that, fuck it, it's not doing me any favours living in a city. I was living in King's Cross in London back in the 90s. Was quite a rough place. Everyone drinking and taking drugs and prostitution and all that stuff. I was living in a council flat. And so I left the whole thing behind and just went out to the countryside and moved into this retreat centre, Osholilo as it was at the time, and stayed there basically. And I learned, you just learn so much living communally. It's very tough in a way, communities. Britain's a pretty good place for communities. It's a pretty good place for communities because, compared to other countries like France, I mean, fuck, they don't, anything that's not pure French. Ah, Luigi, you also in York Way, King's Cross. That was close. I was living on the Priory Green estate in off Pavely Road. Was it Pavely Road? Pavely Street. God, it seems like Pavely House was the name of the block. It was on Collier Street. Kind of road runs parallel with shit. I can't hardly remember the roads anymore. Pentonville Road, the one that goes down towards the Angel. Anyway, yeah, King's Cross. That's an area that's been revitalised a lot. But anyway, living in community, I don't know. It's just it's very, very powerful. But these days, there's less community stuff around, and I think that's mostly because it's just so fucking hard to buy property. It's really, it's just very expensive. And the guy that started Osho Lila, Diano, got into it about 1996, and then he bought a place in 2000. I moved in 2002. He left some years ago. Someone's sending me messages like that. I should quieten that thing down somehow. But anyway, it's, what was I saying? He bought the place, and then you could buy stuff. He bought a pretty big property for 420,000. It's worth quite a bit more now. But then a few years after that, the property shot up in value so much. It's really not easy for people to start communities anymore, and it's kind of missing, and the therapy that goes with it, because you need therapy in a sense, or you need some framework which you can get over all the drama that's created just living close together. You need something, and that's and there's such a potential benefit in it. You can develop so much in a communal environment when you want to go for it. I was always attracted to communities. I think before that I was living in squats for a long time in London, in Camden in the 90s, and squatting places. Not much therapy involved, but you learn. I'm getting a few questions here. Magnagel, I feel like I lost motivation for buying the past 2 weeks. I want to try maybe 10 minutes daily for a week. Should I pick one body part or skip around? I will pick one body part because what I see, a lot of guys are trying to train on their own, and I like to be saying, hey, how can we do that? 10 years ago in therapy, you were always told you got to go to workshops, you got to work one-to-one, it's the only fucking way. And I don't really agree with that, but at the same time, I totally understand that perspective, because you need to develop a certain level of discipline, not like, military sergeant major discipline, but awareness of your own escape routes and your own mind. And, I would train with just work on doing something, Magno, that is like, that you can do like something basic like the bow and the arch or something like that, and do it for 10 minutes a day and see if you feel better. We need to learn. And when your mind, tell me a little bit more if you like. When you say you lost motivation, what was happening before then? Because it's good to look at that. The bottom line is we have a lot of this back doors in the mind. The mind learns all these escape routes. So you're following a practice and it comes up with a very convincing idea, the bottom line of which I should stop the practice right now or later on, or then, we build up resistance towards going back, and the bottom line is, you just need to overcome this stuff and to just develop the kind of awareness that you're looking what's going on in your mind. And when you're in a position and your mind is telling you to stop, why is it doing that? You gotta be a little bit disciplined in your approach and say, okay, I'm going to do, if you've got stuff on music, then you can follow along for the length of time. If you're just doing it a bit freeform, don't just do it a bit freeform. Make yourself a bit disciplined. Say, okay, this morning I'm going to do 20 minutes bow and arch, whatever it is, and I'm going to go round 3 minutes up, 3 minutes down. That's 18 minutes if I go round 3 times. And do it. Just do it. Because like that you develop self-respect, and like that you also get development. If, the reality is that at the point of change or the point of deeper change, there will be resistance in the mind. because you're going into an area of your body, your energetic anatomy, where, you know, repressed emotions are held, where fear is held. So you need to develop a certain discipline. Not like military, we're going in there hard, boys, you know, but just the awareness, okay, I'm trying to get out. I'm trying to get out in my mind and get excited at that point. And that way you can go into a personal session with yourself and say, hey, you know, I'm really excited to see what kind of resistance stories my mind is going to come up with this time. And then not buy them, you know, not buy them. Complete the practice. You don't need to do it longer than you said. Complete the practice and go like that. I hope that helps, man. Okay. Luigi, I've been doing belly activation, shoulder, ankle, bone arch for 2 weeks every day. How long does one stay till I change workout, that is? I mean, how are you doing with it, man? Do you recognize a difference inside yourself? Is something moving in your energy, in your confidence, in your just sort of feeling of being okay to be alive? You know, just give me a little bit. Let me know what's going on, because it's good to alternate exercises and change and move stuff around. You know, sometimes work with the feet, with the shoulders, with the gut, with the bone arch, the pelvis also is good. Those areas, those 5 areas are all very good. And, you know, also see, you know, am I getting positive change? Do I feel different? Give me a little bit of feedback there. Mrs. Magnagel, you were doing shoulder work, and is 10 minutes sufficient? Yeah, you can do 10 minutes. You can do 10 minutes. You know, that's okay. You can do 1 fucking minute. If that's all you've got time for, you know, do 1 minute of belly, pumping the old energy into the belly or something like that can create a little shift. 10 minutes is sufficient. If that's the time you've got, then do 10 minutes. You know, you can do bow and arch up and down 5 times in that time. Breathe and feel. You can do the chair exercise. You know, it's a motherfucker, the chair. I used to do it for 5 minutes at a go, and I'd led a class and put it in there, and I was about 30 seconds in, and I thought, how the fuck did I ever do 5 minutes of this shit? But that's also a trauma release exercise technique. Okay. Do you accept volunteers who assist you in your workshops and learn bioenergetics through Erasmus for young entrepreneurs? I don't know about Erasmus. You could send me an email about that. I mean, the thing is that generally when I'm running a workshop, like if I'm running a weekend workshop, like I got a co-leader, usually Sanjula, a friend of mine, who, you know, it's good to work with if you're a guy, to work with a woman. I find a lot of women come to groups as well, and you know that's useful. Sometimes they need a woman's touch if they're in trouble, you know, or struggling with the group, because the groups are quite confrontational. And as assistants, generally I have people who are experienced with group room, because you know, so the best thing if you want to learn is more to come along to groups, or look if there's a way you can get funding to come along to groups, because the bottom line with assisting is, for me, is you need to log quite a lot of hours in the group. And it's not like we count them up, but after a while you get to really feel, from going into your own process, what other people need. It's not easy to learn from books, from the mind. You know, it's like trying to learn to shout from reading a book, you know. When you're it's all very well to learn about it, but when you're in a confrontational situation with someone, all that learning goes straight out the window, and you're right into your gut reactions and reactivity and mental reactions and avoidance and all of this stuff. You can't really learn any of that from reading, you know. So, you know, by all means get into it. But you know, I think the first thing to do is to do a lot of bioenergetics and do a lot of workshops. That's what I would advise. Thank you, Luigi. Yes, I feel more confident. I do it in an infrared sauna. Whoa, I've not tried that before. Never heard of it. I come out bouncing sometimes. I talk to cashiers and strangers in shops. My goal is to heal my chronic gut pain. Cool. This gut work is great, hey? It's something, I mean, it's new to me. I just started doing it a little bit spontaneously. Last year I was doing shoulder work, arms in the air. I run 2 classes at the centre where I live, morning classes, 1 hour classes a week. And I was doing this for ages. It was driving people nuts, but they'd go through, you know, half an hour of your arms in the air making sound and stuff like this, you know, and it clears a lot of stuff around I can't do it. I did that for a while, and then I started around October. I started doing a lot of cold training myself, not quite the Wim Hof, the Dutch guy, the Iceman guy, but my own kind of developed thing. intuitively, but then I could see it was a bit much for their class, you know, that I teach. It's like some of them are really, really not into that. A lot of Mediterraneans, and it's like a fucking nightmare for them, the cold training. It's bad enough for them in England anyway, and then having to do like the cold training. And then suddenly, a little bit after that, spontaneously, I got interested in the gut around November time or something like that, and I started to do the gut thing, and I've been doing it pretty much every day for like, I don't know, 4 months now, and it's definitely doing stuff to my gut. There's like a lot of old tension in there, and it's just clearing things out. So I hope it's working for you. I've had a lot of tension in my gut. You say chronic gut pain. Obviously, you've got to take it easy and not overdo it. Another exercise you can do, Luigi, with the gut, which I learned actually from Elliot Hulse video, which someone else asked me about, is to get like a football or, you know, basketball if you're in the States, you're in England, and, you know, put it on the floor and roll it a little bit around your gut, with the centre around the belly button, and lie relaxed over it. I've been trying this a bit actually with some strong cushions, and it's quite powerful. Doing 10 minutes of that or something, really breathing and feeling, you know bioenergetics, so you know the style, but that's quite a cool exercise to go a bit deeper in getting some of that gut tension out. And when you work with the gut, you know, be willing, I know you know this stuff anyway, I just say for other people watching, be willing for quite a long process. You can't go in fast really into the gut, really hard and fast, you know you got to be willing to take a while, and it's worth it, you know, it's worth it to take a while. Benita: will bioenergetics change others' behaviour towards us, improve our personality? Bioenergetics will take out the imprints of repression in your system. It will give you usually more kind of natural exuberance, more a feeling like, hey, I'm okay to be me. When you work lower down the body in particular, it also causes your mind and your stress levels to relax. You know, your upper body just starts to relax because a lot of things your mind is busy with, like sexuality for a start, is just totally not your mind's fucking job, basically. So it's like this, you got this kind of boss figure that's doing something that it's totally not designed to do, and it's trying frenziedly to learn how to be sexual or something like this, and it's never going to fucking win because you just need to be more in the body to be sexual. So that's an example of where you can get a lot of change. I think what I learned in my way my personality changes is more relaxation and more flexibility, you know, an ability just to sit and chat to someone. I used to be more narcissistic before and always wanted to hammer my viewpoints out, and just to be able to listen to people, you know, there's a change because you become more your natural self. You know, there is a natural personality that's present, and yes, it's got the thinking and the mind, but it's not this just totally in control doing stuff. So I think on a personality level, bioenergetics is great. You know, if you really want personality change, then more social therapy is also, you know, very strong. Encounter therapy, you know, that's really fast stuff for change, and because it's very effective, it can be very grueling, you know, and tricky to find these days. Okay, I hope that helps. Benita. Magnusel, that workout with the running in circles with the arms up you posted was intense. Yeah, I think I called it intense at the time. I was doing that a lot of that. We did about a month and a half of that. They still talk about that in the community, I think. There's some Christmas thing that we have, like a New Year thing, you know, and they all did. I didn't see it actually, but they did a piss take of it, you know, like, now you got to run in your arms, you know, saying I can do it for the next half an hour or something. And you never tell people how long you're going to go when you start, of course, you know, you just keep going and you do a little bit of emotional expression in it, but it's full on, but it gives you a high feeling as well, you know. And also it's good to work, there's certain shoulder muscles around where it's kind of when we learn as a kid to keep our head down, you know, metaphorically, it can also be physically in the muscle system, is what I mean. You know, when the parents are quite abusive or there's a feeling of unsafety, you know, we keep our head down, you know. And then in life, we go through in this kind of overly protective kind of way, and that's stored in these muscles. So this shoulder exercise is good for getting into that. But you need to do it, you know, don't overdo it at first, giving yourself a challenge that's so hard you end up feeling even more shit at the end because you didn't do it or something, you know. It's not useful. It's good to start a bit more gentle. Benito, like my brother, has a problem of being needy and being taken for granted by people and is afraid of confrontation. Well, that's a classic blocked anger kind of thing. if he's into bioenergetics, then I would get him to do something, show him something like this gut workout. Start to work lower down the body around the gut, and it's good to work with anger. Anger is one of there's 3 core emotions in the kind of school of psychology I learned. With 3 core emotions in the school of psychology I learned, and it wasn't really a theoretical school. I just worked by that first. Anger, pain, and love. And when you're happy to both feel and experience anger and pain, when you can really go there, feel the emotions, express the emotions, show other people the emotions, you get the love. It comes from inside. So that's that's often been one of my. So anger is important, and this neediness. Yeah, it's not easy. Sometimes you just need to be really fucking needy. It's good not to have a trip about neediness, because everyone's needy sometimes. I was always trying to become kind of the alpha male or whatever, but then with girlfriends I always wanted to be like the little child as well sometimes. And it's actually, I think it's quite healthy, that you can be needy, and ideally that you can be needy with friends or work colleagues when you need to be, to say, hey, I'm feeling really needy at the minute, can you do this, whatever, to own it somewhere publicly is quite a relief. So I don't think neediness is so terrible, but if you're always needy, of course, in love relationships, it's not a very attractive quality. Generally, we're very afraid to be needy, often or appear needy to people we're interested in sexually. Did you make any videos about buttocks release? I would like to release tension from my buttocks. What would you recommend? Well, I don't know. Buttocks release. Wow. I mean, buttocks as opposed to lower back is a place where people get a lot of tension. Let me think. I mean, what I would recommend really is pelvic exercises, basically, just thinking about it a little bit. It takes me a little while. I can't always spout off the right thing straight away. I would look at some I'm going to do this pelvic workout, and there's also somewhere in the bioenergetics series, I don't know, maybe number 20 or 25, there's stuff about the pelvis, and there's some great pelvis exercises you can do that are not too noisy or not too uncomfortable. In fact, they can be quite relaxing. I often close long bioenergetic sessions with pelvic exercises because they really start to wake up your pelvis, and that should release buttock tension as well, I figure. Have a look for those on my YouTube channel. Thank you, Lorinas. Does he need to learn some martial arts to improve his personal boundaries? I mean, you can do that. You can do that stuff. It depends what's available and what you can afford, basically. You can do martial arts, but I mean, kind of like, in the UK, that's always the thing that parents talk about. I'm not a parent myself, but friends, parents, the kid's kind of wimpy, let's get him down the karate, and it doesn't always seem to work from my perception. I mean, the thing is with people who are struggling with boundaries, you need to learn to fucking shout, and ideally in a safe space, you need to want to. That's one thing. It's like, it's not you're talking about, I'm assuming. Sometimes people subtly talk about themselves, but I'm assuming it's not about you. So, if he wants to change that, if your brother wants to change that, ideally you find a therapist that you can work with anger, or a workshop where you can really work with anger, and not anger management, This is anger as in fucking screaming and shouting and getting deep into your body with it. With someone who's a bit trained in that area, it's not always easy but to find someone, but that will help with boundaries straight away. Other work generally around the gut is good with boundaries, It's your natural kind of animal power center. And that's the same as anything, it's like, martial. I mean, you can do martial arts is a good. It's more available. Hey, it's more available, and certainly anything to do with the horror and kind of stuff is good. But the best, if you got the money and the people available, therapy is the best for that. Someone who's experienced at working with anger, and a few sessions can really help, or they can give you some techniques so that you can really get in there. And often, you have to go through a little bit of a journey with it. There's other emotions in the way. There's it can be sadness or a backlog of other, mental stories in the way why it's not okay to be angry. You know, people even become Buddhists and shit because they're scared of anger. You know, nothing wrong with Buddhism, but they're not doing it from a really particularly clear space. Anger is a very important emotion to be able to work with. I worked a lot with anger. And what emotions or energies tension in the buttocks is associated? That is an exceptionally good question to which I do not know the answer, basically, specifically the buttocks. I mean, the pelvis is primarily sexual energy, you know, and the pelvis has a lot of natural movement because, I mean, if it wasn't for pelvic movement, we wouldn't be here, basically, is the bottom line, unless you're a test tube baby. You know, so the pelvis is a whole kind of amazing art form somewhere, you know, and when you can really let your pelvis be free and release. You see, I was leading pelvic release last weekend, and fucking hell, some people were jumping like almost 3 foot in the floor on mattresses, you know, like just vibrating and bouncing, and you can't always make yourself do that, but I try to lead it in a certain way people can relax, and then when the final bit comes, their body just really starts to take off, and it's a total fucking release. And it's happening because the mind is stopping the control. That's all. That's all it is. There's nothing miraculous. It's just that this mind has taken over control so much. You know, it's become like a mad 70s boss, you know. If everyone just did what I told them, this body would be okay, you know. Massively in control in this kind of tense way. And when you can relax and let, you know, there's a lot of natural intelligence in the gut and the pelvis, and let them have their way for a bit, then the whole body just starts to release. It's hugely relaxing. People have huge shifts from it. Will a foam roller work for the gut? Give it a try. I've also had the same question in my own mind earlier this week, and I've got a few foam rollers, but I didn't look for them. I think I spaced it out. Which exercises would you recommend for specifically between the shoulder blades? If you look through the early ones of my bioenergetic workouts, like 2, 3, 4, there's something about the shoulders there. And this tension between the shoulder blades is very interesting. You know, this area here is one of the most interesting areas of our anatomy in energetic terms, because it's where we close our heart from, basically. You know, the physical heart's around here somewhere. Energetic, emotional heart is here. And when we're very, very sad, in grief about something, often you feel like something is bursting open here. You feel your heart open. But the heart closes from between the shoulder blades. And so we learn as kids that if we keep this area tight, we can keep a lot of our emotions, particularly the more sad side of the spectrum of emotions, under control. By keeping this area here tight. So we think a lot, we do a lot, and we keep this mind, neck, shoulders, arm circuit very busy. You know, computers keep this mind, that circuit very busy. They maintain a level of tension here. It stops us feeling vulnerable. It stops our emotions coming, but it dehumanizes us. So it's very good to work on that kind of area. When I did the pelvic wave exercise with a lot of focus on awareness for a day or two, shortly after this period, I felt hungrier and hornier for a while. This stuff might just be very powerful. Yeah, pelvic wave exercise is great. It's another good one to end sessions on because it's kind of relaxing for people. And yeah, I mean, great, basically. I guess for hunger, if you end up eating tons, it's not so great depending on your body weight. And the hornier is good, hey? It's good to feel it. You know, it's curious when you do bioenergetics, you know. I mean, you can be hornier and more sexy. Because we're normally brought up to believe that for, what was it when I was growing up? Like, man's sexual potency is at 17 is the highest. That's what I told you in the 70s in Britain. And for women, it's like 35, 40, you know. And it's utter bollocks. You know, you can be horny as anything and sexually potent as anything way up, certainly up into your late 50s. That's my experience, and I'd be very surprised if it drops off even before you get into your 80s, you know. So, you know, and it's okay, despite what a lot of kind of pseudo-political stuff going on these days might be telling us guys, it is okay to be horny, and it is okay to want sex, you know. And this work really pulls us back in the body. So I'm happy it's going good for you, Spang. That happened to me too with the pelvic wave. Cool. It's really interesting. Maybe energy flow better in those regions for a while, less tension. Generally, if you work in the lower body, see the reality is we have decamped our lower body. you know, and we've gone up into the mind, thinking and thinking and thinking and doing and doing and doing. And, you know, this bit's a bit involved. The shoulders and neck start to get tense and we cut off from the body. And the reality is everyone is horny as fuck, basically. But if we're always up in our head, we don't. It starts to drop off after a while. Not your sexy organs, but your horniness drops off. But when you come back in, you feel it. You know, when I used to do bioenergetics groups and therapy groups in the old days of the Humanity, I mean, everyone would be horny as fuck on the group. You know, it would be a madhouse. It was kind of fun as well. But there is it has that to it, you know. It makes people horny. It makes men horny. It makes women horny. You just want to have sex, you know. It's a natural thing. It's a natural thing. Yeah, I mean that's it. You know, it's like the bottom line is this mind is trying to keep all this stuff under control, and you know, it's like a boss that's gone a bit mad, out of control. Sexuality is not meant to be run with the mind. You know, it's really not. Personal power. Thanks, mate. It seems like we vacate the body because we don't deem our feelings good or appropriate. Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, I actually put this out on a video last week, a bit of theory or something it's called. But like, you know, we learn as teenagers that we need to kind of be a certain way in order to get basic needs met. Like the need for friends, you know, to belong to a social group, the need for lovers, you know, for people to find us attractive, who we fancy, and the need later on for a job, for a role in society. And so we learn to kind of become like a projector, putting a personality out. And emotions which don't fit into that personality, we repress. Prefrontal cortical control from here, we repress the feelings. And they get repressed into the body, and more this mind's gone a bit crazy, trying to run everything from the prefrontal cortex. It's got executive control over your personality. And it's not that it's so terrible, but if you keep storing up repressed emotions in your body, especially the back of the body where it hides them, because it figures no one can see them there, basically. That's what I assume its reasoning is. Then, of course, you get very clagged up emotionally and energetically. It's like your body's become this pipe which is just full of old crap, and only a little bit of liquid is getting through it. But the bioenergetics can start to clear that out, and then suddenly your energy's right up, and you can just do pretty much what you want, even into older years. You know, your body gets older. The great thing also about bio, I've noticed recently, is like, you know, because I was running for a while, and when I was down in Brighton a lot, I had a girlfriend down here, and I'd go out in the mornings. You know, sometimes I'd do 5k, 10k, so 10k very occasionally, but it would knacker my body out a bit. You know, my ankles had never been healthy. I had a thing with my ankles when I was a kid. They didn't grow properly, the tendons, and had operation. My knees, it would knacker my body out, and the bioenergetics doesn't do that. You know, it doesn't tone muscle in the way that going to the gym can, but it gets you right inside yourself, and you feel good. You know, and you know how to make yourself feel good as well with a morning workout. It's good. What would you recommend for removing tension from painkiller injections in the hospital? I don't know much about that. So they injected painkillers into you, and it's left you feeling tense. I guess it's had an effect on the muscles. Is that I'm not really AMP, anatomy and physiology person, big time, but I guess it's had an effect on the muscles. You know, some people like using magnesium. You know, it's not so much my area, but there's a lot of that can help the muscles relax a lot more. For some people, you might want to try that from a herbal supplement store. Get some good quality magnesium. It kind of froths up. Sometimes people add St. John's wort to it or something. It's not really my area, this kind of thing. But being in the alternative scene for years, I know a few of these things. And that's had quite a revolutionary effect on some people, they say. Otherwise, you know, you just need to get in there and, with the bioenergetics, get some of the tension out, which is breathing through it. It's opening up those areas of the body through certain positions, and then breathing and feeling the body. Thanks, Devaraj Q&A. It was very useful. Thank you for tuning in, Magnajol. I hope it goes good for you, ma'am. How are we doing for time? 1:30. Just gone 1:30. Okay. Yeah. Where were we? Yeah, for painkiller injections did this to you. I don't know. You could check in somewhere with the doctors or something if that's a side effect from them, or sometime with it's very hard to know where tension is really. Sometimes people do a bioenergetic session and it's like fucking hell, I'm really tense. And actually, when you look more deeply at it, it's actually their awareness has just deepened a little bit, and they're aware now of where the tension is in their body. This is common from a lot of different therapies. We can live in a state of blissful ignorance, seemingly blissful ignorance up here, and not be aware of all the tensions or kind of dead zones of our body. And very often the first part of a process of positive change is the sudden awareness, like, I am tense as fuck. That's very often the first stage that you realise, Jesus, my neck is tense, or Jesus, my lower back is tense. I couldn't even feel it before. Now I can feel it. It's like this vice-like fucking thing, So, be aware that can be, I don't know if that applies to you, but yeah, you can check out about the painkiller injections and stuff, and if that's tension's a side effect. Otherwise, if they say it's not, and you think maybe it's not, just look at moving the tension anyway. What I find in life is like, because I work as a therapist all the time, most of the time, and people, we learn, I certainly learned, adaptive strategies to diminish the emotional impact of things, and the big one of those is to blame it on something else, whatever it is, So you've always got to look, can I take responsibility for as much as possible, Because I see out there, I had all these escape routes as a kid. You learn to blame other people for things, whether it starts off in the playground, blaming people, then it moves into blaming the parents, and then it gets onto blaming society or the banks or the Illuminati or whatever. The bottom line is, whether it's true or not, you're making yourself a victim. Every time you put the point of change, even subtly outside of yourself, you make yourself a victim. So be aware of that, because with the injections, maybe they did do that and it's bad, but make sure you're not blaming the hospital or the process too much. Don't give that, even if they gave you a wrong fucking injection or whatever and fuck things up. Try not to go too much down. People go down the line of blame, doesn't end up good. You might get a payout at some point, but at some point we have to take, in order to change, we have to take the maximum responsibility ourselves. Sometimes people really don't want to hear that. They really don't want to hear it. Americans are some of the best people at taking responsibility, and the fucking worst as well. It's been my experience. I started massaging my buttocks and I feel it helps. Cool. Great. Luigi, belly activation stage 2. My throat vibrates as well. Is that right? Yeah, sure, man. I think I often sometimes make people imagine that their throat or their whole windpipe, thoracic cavity, whatever, is like a didgeridoo or one of something like that, and you're trying to vibrate down into the belly. You're trying to create a vibration in the belly. So yeah, you got to get that. There's these Tibetan monks on the Kyoto monks, I think they call themselves. I don't know if Kyoto, maybe that's in Japan, but anyway, they do this very deep throat sound, and this is the kind of sound you want, and for most of us it takes a while to get there. We may never get there. For women it can be a little bit harder because the voice is not so naturally deep, but it's still beneficial to keep trying. Cool. I'm doing it right then. Yeah, man. I mean, the basic thing is with that throat thing is you need as deep a sound as you can make. When, some other body-based therapy stuff will teach you to make a sound for the solar plexus about here, which is your kind of personal power center, and that's normally a kind of ape sort of hoo, hoo, hoo. You'll see it most famously in Osho dynamic meditation, the 3rd stage. But with this belly thing, you need to get deeper down as low as you can, and it will help to deepen your voice and your vocal range anyway. So the bottom line is you're making as deep a sound as you can. That's basically it. And then, when it comes to that stage where you're going, ooh, 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 if you've been doing this exercise, then that sound needs to be deep. Don't go into the hoo, hoo, hoo too much. Stay deeper sound as you can and keep focusing your awareness in the belly. I mean, I've been doing it 3 or 4 months, and I wouldn't give it up yet. Myself, because I'm still into it. I'm still into it, and I just see it's giving me a lot. It's little by little pulling my awareness down. You can do this exercise with a football. That's pretty. I found that quite intense. And someone else wrote to me about it, worried it was too intense for them and stuff. We just talked a little bit, but that's where I heard about it from. Receding hairline, Devaraj. Were you the guy from last week busy with a receding hairline? I don't know if it's receded again since last week. Maybe. But, you know, I'm a firm believer in... Someone else asked me, you know, I was sitting with a friend this lunchtime about my hair kind of disappearing and stuff. And I find I don't really mind about it so much. I used to. Before I used to think, well, I won't get any sex unless I've got loads of hair. So when you make an association like that in your mind, then of course losing hair seems like a really bad fucking thing, you know. But I don't know. It's not such a big deal for me. When it first started to recede quite a bit about 6 or 7 years ago, I was kind of quite busy with it for a while and thinking, oh shit, you know, it's like I can see it's going thin. But you know, but somewhere, you know, you've got to look at human needs and how we're tied up in our minds sometimes. So when we get very busy with a part of our appearance or whatever, we blame it because we haven't got a girlfriend, boyfriend, the friends we want or whatever. You've got to look if that's really true, and just look. Needs mostly come back to friends, lovers, and work. You know, role. Most of that stuff comes back to that. And just see if you've got any unhealthy associations there, you know. We were all brought up in a pretty mad fucking culture. Well, I certainly was in the UK. And I think Europe and America, that statement applies. And it's easy to make all sorts of mad associations, or, you know, they're always trying to sell you something to do something. So they've got to kind of, as Tony Robbins would say, magnify the hurt to start with, you know. Worried about losing hair, you know, and some advert where some woman is looking at all the guys with loads of hair and whatever, you know. I mean, if you're going to buy into that, then of course you don't want to lose your hair, but it's just not really true, basically, you know. And if you do this bio a lot, you develop a certain vibrancy in your personality, which makes you, you know, you will find the people you want to hang out with, I think. What would you recommend for people who want to make their spine come back to perfect natural geometrical proportions? Stop thinking like that. Probably be the first thing I would say, you know, because I don't think there is a perfect spine, and I'm not a perfect, I'm not into A&P so much, anatomy and physiology, but, you know, you have to find your spine. That's the first thing to get, because if you're trying to make something perfect, that's not you. You've got to find your spine, you know, and that, with bioenergetics, that will happen when you take out all the repression, and we have a lot of repression. My estimation is the average human being is probably repressing 80-90% of their feelings actively, and certainly certain poles of feeling, certain areas of the feeling spectrum more than others, the ones we're not comfortable with. But, you know, you've got to get off this perfect thing to start with, you know. Sylvie, there is too. Did you find this in the end? No one believe how old you are. I'm 57. Is it for bioenergetics? I think I answered this before another week, but like I always did look a bit young. You know, I was never the first one to be able to get into the pub. They didn't used to card you in those days, back in the 70s and stuff and 80s. But you know, I was never the first. There was one guy at school. Can't remember his name now, but he was about 14 and he could get served at the pub. You know, so you'd get him to go in the off license and get beer for you and stuff like that. Wasn't going to be me, but I wasn't the youngest looking one. It definitely helps to do bioenergetics because you know it's not mental, it's not cerebral, it's in your body. The reality is when you run a lot or do a lot of physical gym exercise, that helps your energy and you can feel good and vital, but it doesn't get right in there. You know, you get toned and your body looks good, but it doesn't get right in there. It doesn't get the repressed stuff out, and that's what you need to maintain vitality. That way your vitality and awareness are going up. You're not just fighting some sort of battle against the tide of the years coming at you. They're going up. Simple as that. You know, and that's the reality if you practice this stuff. And it's not easy. You need to maintain it, you know, and get into it. And it takes a while to get inspired and get into it. But if you do it regularly, you know, you will not really age, I don't think, at the same rate. Certainly energetically you won't age. I can wake up these days and my body's stiff as fuck, you know. I mean, if I slept a long time, you get stiff. But if I start breathing down into my belly, pretty soon there's a fluidity there that's powerful. And the body's still stiff, but there's a fluidity of energy inside there that you can feel, and it's vital and alive. And then, of course, you know, the body relaxes, or I do something to relax it, the upper body a bit, or get this belly thing moving more and more. What I'm realizing is the belly is the key. It's not covered much in many you know, exercise routines or in psychotherapy or anything. Mostly you work where the problem seems to be, but what I'm finding is the belly is the key. It's like this missing spot. There's certain myths that human beings always love, and one of them is that there's a place where you can, there's like a Shangri-La somewhere, you know. And in terms of the body, that's the idea. There's a place where you can reset everything, or you can bring it back to year zero. And that, for me, it does exist, and it's in the gut. You know, we disinhabit our gut. Simple as that. You're also 57 in October. Okay, a little bit younger than me. Cool. Caroline. Yeah, you were in touch a little while ago. Good evening, Devaraj. I want to ask something. I read somewhere to feel it is to heal it. What if your control is so strong that you cannot release your anger? Well, there's a couple of strategies. There's certain things you can do to bring emotions closer to the surface, and the bioenergetics is one of those. Working with shoulders, you know, if you look at the shoulder workout, and particularly this up and down in your shoulders, that can do a lot to bring emotions closer to the surface. Working with the gut can bring emotions closer to the surface. But what I would what I would recommend, you know, if you're in a space or you got the money, is that you do it. Sorry, someone else sent me a message. What I recommend if you've got some cash, is that you go to a therapist to work with it, because it's great to be able to access your anger, and it's not the end of the world if you can't do it, but it's really, really useful. And to feel it is to heal it. Yes, all feeling is healing. As a fact, the first New Age group I went to in about 1998, the therapist, breath worker, he would do, Gert, his name was, nice guy, Gert Langer, I think, and he always said, feeling is healing. I think it was him anyway. But I remember hearing that and thinking, God, New Age, bloody claptrap, but I mean, it's totally true. It's totally true. So, you know, your control is so strong that you cannot release your anger. You know, it doesn't necessarily your control is so strong. There may be just old layers of fear and stuff. Don't build up too much of a self-image of being like a fortress or something like that. I don't know if it's so useful. You know, it can be a real long journey for a lot of people to get into anger, but it's good to be taking steps. So, you know, look for somewhere where there's some therapy you could do maybe around that. If you are in Holland, the Humaniversity is an excellent place. That's up in Egmond aan Zee. Crigi00, what do you think about metacognitive therapy? I'm generalized anxiety and depression, find myself overthinking my feelings and everything. I don't know anything about metacognitive therapy, I'm afraid. So I can't give an opinion there. With anxiety and depression, generally, bioenergetics is quite a good approach. I'm actually hoping with a friend of mine to start a study in the Brighton area soon, where we're going to start treating people who've got a basic level of either anxiety or depression, and see how it goes, and emotional expression as well. So, yeah, this overthinking, of course, is endemic in our society anyway, anxiety or depression regardless. But the general strategy should be to come back into your body and get to feel your body as much as possible. If you can work with a therapist, it's great. If you can't, you could try some of my bioenergetic workouts and see how you get on with them. So I saw a study recently where people who exercise would gain more muscle mass if they focused on the muscle closely when working with it. I don't personally run out, but I found it interesting. Yeah, I mean, you know, where we focus is where we get change. No doubt about it. No doubt about it at all. Not sure if it's legit. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, who knows? There's so many bloody studies and so much news and fake news and whatever. You know, people sometimes ask me about, you know, how to integrate this with, you know, to get proper clinical acceptance. I don't fucking care. I don't bother with that stuff, really. I mean, I don't like the idea of kowtowing to this great kind of mind that's got all these PhDs. You know, fuck that shit, man. It's the wrong way round anyway. You know, it's the wrong way round anyway. So why, you know, some therapists really go for that. You know, they want to get clinical acceptance, and they get in all sorts of arguments with more, you know, mental PhD type of people, academics and that, about, you know, the body and trying to prove what this treatment works for depression or whatever. I mean, what's the fucking point? You're just getting an argument with there's no point. You know, there's no point. The bottom line is the existing, you know, world medical situation is fucking dire. Basically, everyone's taking a ton of pharmaceuticals because it makes money for pharmaceutical corporations, and the vast majority of them, if they work at all, only work short term. At some point, the whole market has to come back. It has to come back to the body and bioenergetics and stuff. It has no choice, you see. It has no choice at the end of the day, because none of the other shit works, and you can't finally totally compartmentalize yourself and be healthy and functional and make money to support the society. You know, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. At some point, you know, and I have some contacts with people who know the quite high up people in the NHS or whatever, you know, the health service over here, the government based thing, and they are looking, because basically everyone knows the drug companies, they're just companies, you know, they're companies making money out of human illness, and it's not an effective long-term strategy. They're milking the living shit out of the economy, basically, and of course they do it because that's how the free market works. But the reality is, at some point people are going to come back to sorting. You know, you've got to get more in your body, and then you feel better. So I'm going off on a tangent a little bit. So this whole thing with studies and stuff, you know, it's all good, but I'm also not so bothered. You know, I don't feel like I need to justify what I'm doing to someone with a PhD. I would just be falling into their whole game of life, you know. I just wait for them to get ill and say, I can help you if you want. I'm having a hard time reaching a deep vibration. I can vibrate, but not at the depth I feel most of the cobwebs are. Any suggestions on emotional and emotional? I mean, you've got to be careful a little bit with this stuff, Keva, because yes, you know, there are certain postures where you can help the body to vibrate, and there's this thing called Kundalini in the spiritual scene and that. But the reality is like, you know, you might not be at the point in your development where you need that to happen. You know, it's like not all of it happens by a big vibration. But I did do a couple of videos about getting the Kundalini moving. If you look for anything in Kundalini there, which is essentially a spontaneous muscle release not controlled by the brain. That's the kind of definition I'm using, which is more of a physical definition rather than a spiritual one. But, you know, be careful that you're not chasing some kind of dream of a spontaneous release, you know, but it may be not that realistic for it to happen. Anyway, yeah, I was thinking of something there, you know, in the old days, about 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, actually, Arthur Yanov wrote a book called The Primal Scream, very famous book in the history of therapy, and he described a young guy having this massive yell at some point, and all his problems kind of disappeared, you know, from his primal gut kind of complex, and he let it out, and and he was just cured, you know. And so a whole generation of people in therapy afterwards were looking for this, you know, one big primal scream when everything would be cured, you know. It went on for fucking years, you know, people looking for this. I've read Arthur Yanov's book, and I want the primal scream, and it's, you know, it's not realistic. I never ever met anyone who had one primal kind of release and that was the end. I never met anyone who that happened for. Maybe it did sometimes for people. I never met one. You've got to be, so don't set yourself up too much. It's got to look a certain way is what I'm trying to say. You know, and I have got some videos on trying to induce when you're in the arch position. For example, you know, if you know the bow and the arch, you can take your heels a little bit off the floor while you're leaning down and straighten your legs and see if that induces a bit of shaking. There's a few positions around there you can try to put yourself on the edge, and when you're on that edge, sometimes the muscles start to vibrate. But don't go around thinking that it's not okay if you don't get it, because it's not so important. Thank you a lot. Your videos have helped me a lot. That's cool. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that, man. Spot on about Big Pharma, yeah. For a long time, I was kind of, I was really pissed off with pharmaceutical. I was against it, I was a punk and a squatter in my 20s, and I dropped out of society when I was 21, and was really against it, The Ramones, a big punk band in the old days, had this song, I'm against it, Whatever it is, I'm against it. And that was pretty much me. And nowadays, I don't, they're just companies. They're just companies doing what they set out to do, which is make money from pharmaceuticals. The trouble is that when you put people's healthcare into the free market system, it doesn't seem to work very well thus far. Some other stuff it's great for, Can you make a living being a therapist? Not easy. I think you have to be willing to dedicate quite a lot of time to it. I currently make a living. How do I make a living? I bought a house once for my sister, and the house went up in price a lot. She'd come out of prison actually, and the house went up in value a lot because of the times, and I made some money out of that, which I lent to a lawyer I knew, and he was paying the interest for a long time. I've got some cash I get in monthly from that interest. I get some money from the community, and I make some money doing one-to-ones and leading workshops. But it's not easy to make a living just out of a therapy. I would reckon of all the people who've done therapist trainings, especially if you include stuff like yoga and massage, I'd be willing to bet under 5% of them making a proper living out of it. Somewhere between 0 and 10% at the most. It's not easy. It's not easy. You just stick at it, and the core thing is to do what you love. Find out what you love and keep doing that. And usually this is somewhere, I don't know, the universe gives it back to you at some point, and you start to make some cash. That's been my experience. Okay, we're coming close to the hour, so I'm going to soon wrap this one up. If you've got any last minute questions, Taj, yeah, man, you're often on my channel. Expressing my personality as anything other than a people pleaser exacerbates feelings of fear and guilt. Belly exercise, man. Got to get down in that gut, down in that belly, and start to drop the whole people pleaser thing. Anything you can do to do workshops where you are will help. If there's anyone doing encounter therapy where you are, it's going to help a whole ton. It's a complete remedy for pleasing. But it needs to be run by people because it's very intense. It needs to be run by people who know what the fuck they're doing. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Keva. If I would act from my gut, I would act very irresponsible and get in so much trouble. Well, I don't know exactly what you're suggesting, whether it's violence or sex or whatever. You've got other centres as well. It's certainly true, when I work with guys, I think if you just put them in the gut centre, there is a risk they all try and become like Sylvester Stallone or something like that, and that can be a phase. But the reality is that the energy also moves to the heart. So then you start to have more, you have different feelings as well, vulnerability, and you get into the heart. This guy on YouTube who's very famous, Elliot Hulse, is an excellent example of that. I don't know his whole history, though. I was talking recently to a guy who was working with him like 15 years ago, and he went through this whole phase where he'd been the tough guy for a long time and a strong man, and teaching young guys, and had 2 million followers, and he started to change. He wanted to go more in a heart direction, as I see it. And that was quite a journey for him because he was changing his act. But, it's great to get into the gut center, and then, once you really do that authentically, it naturally distributes around your body. You also develop a heart so you can feel where people are at. You can see a bit, but also, there's nothing wrong with, I don't know what you don't relate specific, maybe you don't feel to say exactly what your irresponsibility would take, what direction it would take, but don't let your mind over judge things also. The reality is this mind can only predict and work on the past, and you don't know till you get into something how it would be. And it's quite a standard defense mechanism from the mind not to do something because, I become this terrible person or whatever. I didn't see that happen. In fact, in the groups I've led in the therapy I was around, I never really saw any young guys just become macho arseholes from doing gut-centered work. It's actually somewhere the macho arseholes coming more from the mind, What is counter therapy? I mean, encounter therapy. Encounter therapy. You can look it up. Encounter therapy is like came out of America in the 60s and 70s. Used to treat drug addiction originally, I think. And it's where people give up their judgments about each other. It's a grueling kind of therapeutic process. Thanks, Dev. As a new teacher, I need to find my own voice apart from the input. Absolutely, man. If you're going to work with 13 to 15-year-olds, I don't know, man. I mean, when I was at school, I wasn't such a bad boy at school, really. I was a bit more shy. But certainly some of the kids in class people pleasers got eaten alive, basically, in Essex, which is not the most enlightened part of the UK. Yeah, you know, you need to have a gut centre, and then people will respect you as well, and you can hold a line. Thank you. Okay, cool. I think I'm going to give it about 1 more minute or something, in case there's any desperate questions, and then leave this live feed. The next one I think is next Friday, so check for me next Friday, 6 p.m. UK time. I have a feeling that the clocks are going to change soon, but maybe that's the week after. Anyway, okay. They can be a handful. Yeah, I can bet. Jesus. Yeah, man. Well, I wish you all the luck, Taj. I wish you all the luck. What's your next workout video? I'm going to do that pelvic workout video that I've been banging on about for bloody ages and haven't done yet. I just need to sit down or actually lie down and do it. So I'm going to try and do that next week. I'm also trying to improve the Wi-Fi. And also, I think when I'm looking back at my screen now, it's like it's going in kind of slow motion a bit. I don't know if that's what it looks like there, but I probably need to get a new phone soon if that's the case, because this one used to be good and it seems to be degenerating. If anyone can tell me if the sound and visuals are okay, that would be helpful for anyone who's still on, because I liked it to have a reasonable quality. Yeah, you're breaking up. It's not slow. Okay. Breaking up sound, or the picture breaks up a bit. Anyway, it's useful. I'm not sure because I can see my own phone, and if I move now it's kind of natural, but at times it seems to be running a little bit slow in the picture. So maybe I need to invest in a new phone. They don't last very long these days. Okay. Like I bought this phone like about just over a year ago, you know, brand new Sony. It's been okay so far, but sound has been off a bit. Okay. Over here it's okay. Okay. Well, it's a variety of opinions. Okay, guys, thanks very much for your support, and I hope I've answered some good questions. I'm enjoying doing these sessions, and over and out. I'll be back next Friday if anyone's up for it. Cheers.